I don't know if you guys pay attention to this story. We didn't even talk about it last week because I wasn't following it that much because there's always things that people are outraged about. Hank Haney, who has a show on SiriusXM, made a joke about like the fact that the U.S. Women's Open was going on this past weekend. I think we have the audio of this. I'm going to play it for you if you haven't heard it. Basically, to kind of walk you through it, he was asked who he thought was going to win the U.S. Women's Open. And he said something along the lines of, I don't know, I'm not really, that much of an expert in the U.S. Women's Open, but I guess it'll be one of the Lees, essentially. I've read the quotes. I haven't heard this audio, so we're going to play it for you. And people lost their mind because evidently there are a lot of South Korean women's professional golfers who all have the last name Lee. All right, listen to this audio. He was suspended. He's indefinitely suspended now from his radio show. SiriusXM took him off the air for this. By the way, we reached out to Hank Haney, or at least I did on Twitter last night, and invited him on the show. We haven't heard back yet. But here is what he said last week going into the Women's U.S. Open that got him suspended.
74th U.S. Women's Open. Yeah.
I'm going to predict a Korean.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a pretty safe bet.
That's going to be my prediction.
Okay. What is your prediction?
I couldn't name you like 6 players on the LPGA Tour.
Yeah.
Nah, maybe I could. I don't know. Well, I'd go with Lee. If I didn't have to name a first name, I'd get a bunch of them right. But
you're telling me there's a chance.
Yeah, I don't know.
You got 6
Thompson.
Lees.
Honestly, Michelle Wee's hurt. I mean, she's not. I don't know many, but.
So that sounds fairly innocuous to me. Honestly, that's the first time I've heard the audio. He was suspended. This has been a major story in the world of perpetually offended sports and politics colliding in some way. I'll play it for you again at the start of the next segment. But the punchline here, which is unbelievable, is guess who won the U.S. Women's Open? A Korean golfer named Lee. And there are so many Korean golfers named Lee that she puts a 6 at the end of her name. I'm not making this up. So Hank Haney has been suspended for saying, you know what, I'd go with a woman named Lee, and saying there are like 6 of them, and people are like, oh, it's racist. I'm going to play that clip for you again. I want the Outkick jury to weigh in as well. 877-996-6369. Is what Hank Haney said racist? Should he have been suspended? I'll play the audio for you again.
74th U.S. Women's Open. Yeah.
I'm going to predict a Korean.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a pretty safe bet.
That's going to be my prediction.
Okay. What is your prediction?
I couldn't name you like 6 players on the LPGA Tour.
Yeah.
Nah, maybe I could. I don't know. Well, I'd go with Lee. If I didn't have to name a first name, I'd get a bunch of them right. But
you're telling me there's a chance.
Yeah, I don't know.
You got 6
Thompson.
Lees.
Honestly, Michelle Wee's hurt. I mean, she's not. I don't know many.
So a woman named Lee wins. There are 6 women on the LPGA Tour with the exact same name. Eddie Garcia, what's that name?
Jeong-eun Lee.
Okay, 6 of them with the exact same name that Eddie Garcia just gave you, such that they identify themselves with a number after it so you know which one it is. So number 6 of Jeong-eun Lee won on the LPGA Tour. Hank Haney was suspended for this. SiriusXM ran from him. Christine Brennan at USA Today Sports said he should be fired and never able to enter any golf course in the world again. She wrote that in USA Today. Is there a single person who agrees with her in my audience? Open forum. Dub, did we get a single call from people who agree with the SiriusXM suspension?
Well, we've been taking calls on this for the better part of an hour. So I've probably gone through about 20 people and not one. 20 for 20 are in agreement with you and the crew.
Everybody on the crew agrees with me. I haven't seen anybody on social media. Now, I can't keep up with all my mentions, but I haven't seen a single person on social media who agrees with this either. It's an example of allowing the idiocy of a mob, and a mob being led by a reporter from USA Today Sports who said he should be fired, should never be allowed to ever play golf again. That's what she said in the wake of his comments. And let me take some of your calls. Whoever you think should go first, Dub. Again, open phone lines. If there's a single person in all 50 states listening to us right now, if there is a single person worldwide listening to us right now who agrees that he should have been suspended for this, again, my position is this is no different than saying you're picking a Kenyan to win a marathon, or you're picking an Indian to win the spelling bee. There are certain groups that dominate contests or events. Kenyans dominate marathoning. Indians, by and large, dominate the spelling bee. And right now, Koreans, for whatever reason, dominate in many ways the LPGA. Who you got for me?
All right, let's start off with Justin in Cincinnati.
Justin in Cincy, what's up?
Okay, first of all, Eddie Garcia is still a name snob by being able to pronounce her name. Okay, this is coming from a white guy in a landscaping business. This is not racist. He's just being honest. The Koreans kick our butt.
Yeah, I don't. You can say his name. Is Eddie still there? Is he doing another update? Can he just show off and pronounce the name of the U.S. Women's Open champion again?
Jeong-eun Lee.
Like he says, the Greek freak.
Yeah, Jeong-eun Lee. All right, so this is crazy. Thanks for the call. This is crazy. There are 6 women, all named Jeong-eun Lee, on the LPGA. That is wild. Again, I'm just saying, can you imagine if in the NFL there were 6 guys named Tom Brady and they all played quarterback, and they had to put like Brady number 6, like they do for this golfer, on the back of the jersey. And then if I came on and I'm like, I don't know who's going to win the Super Bowl, probably Brady. It wouldn't be racist. I mean, that's the factual situation. Who's up next?
Derek in Iowa.
Derek in Iowa, what you got for me?
Hey, Clay, thanks. Hey, I grew up in Boston, and we always picked a Kenyan, and no one blinked an eye at that.
In the Boston Marathon, you mean? Like you'd say, who's going to win? I'm going to take a Kenyan dude.
Yeah. We didn't know any names. We just said the Kenyan's going to win.
And imagine if there were 6 Kenyans with the exact same name, and you just said one of their names, right? I don't even know what a Kenyan name is. But whatever the Kenyan, like if you knew, there's this guy, these Kenyans, and their last name is X, and they end up winning all the time. Like if you didn't know much about the Boston Marathon, you're like, I'm going to pick that Kenyan X dude. There's 6 of them. They're probably going to win. Like, how is that right? Like that's factually accurate when you look at the data.
Correct. I got 2 more points. I think there's a story behind this. Being in Iowa right now, that Dolphin reporter, there was a story behind the story there. I think there was head bumping about the King Kong comment. And
also, they brought him back, right?
Yeah, they brought him back, but I'm a kind of an insider on that. There's a story behind it. They were bumping heads within each other. But and then if you think about the men's side of golf, there's like, I don't know, a handful of Johnsons. If the guy said Johnson, would he not be able to golf? Also, I mean, it's just she's nuts, man. She needs to be checked in somewhere.
Yeah, like imagine that you didn't know much about swimming, and there were 6 guys named Phelps in the top of the men's swimming division, and they were about to do one of the gold medal races, and you're like, man, I don't know, but I'm going to pick a Phelps. Or you said, hey, I'm going to pick a white guy named Phelps. That wouldn't be racist. Like if there were 6 white guys named Phelps and they all were gold medal winners, you would be like, that's just kind of an offhand comment of like a good guess from somebody who's not really paying that much attention to the sport. Like I said earlier, imagine that Cooper Manning was able to play football, right? And he was also a great quarterback. And he also won a couple of Super Bowls. If you said like, who's going to win the Super Bowl this year? And you're like, man, I'm not a big NFL guy, but I'll take one of the Mannings. That wouldn't be racist. Peyton won 2 Super Bowls. Eli won 2 Super Bowls. If Cooper had been healthy enough and able to play and he had been a quarterback, or Archie had still been playing, and you'd said, I'll take one of the Mannings. That wouldn't be, I mean, I don't even understand the argument for how this is racist. Who's up next?
We got Paul in Pennsylvania.
Paul in Pennsylvania. What's up, Paul?
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, what you got for me?
The thing about this whole situation is the gross overreaction that this woman had and just the sloppy lazy journalism, I think, that's going in here. I think she heard him say Korean, and I mean, he could have said, woman of Korean descent.
But
maybe
the Korean
said, okay,
thing,
that might have been a little insensitive.
Yeah, but
you know
here's
what I mean? But
here's the thing about the Korean aspect. It's the same as saying that's why I went to Kenyan. Korean is a country, right? Like, so the country is dominating in a particular sport. So it's like, again, if you said, oh, I'm going to take the Kenyan, or I'm going to take the Indian, or I'm going to take, let's say, what do we dominate in basketball? Like, if you were in a foreign country and you're like, man, I don't know, I'll take the American. Like, who's going to win the snowboarding championship? And you're doing sports talk radio in, let's say, I don't know, Brazil. And they're like, who do you take to win the snowboarding championship? You're like, man, I'm going to take the American. Aren't they all? Don't we win like every snowboarding championship in the Winter Olympics? It wouldn't be racist to take the American. The people who are dominating in the LPGA are Korean. They happen to be Asian, but they're dominating from Korea. So saying I'm going to take the Koreans is not like, imagine that the NBA suddenly, let's pretend that Croatia, which produces a lot of great athletes, right? Let's pretend that Croatia suddenly has the 4 best players in the NBA, right? Just pretend that it happens. And if you said, man, who are you going to take to win the NBA MVP this year, and you weren't a huge NBA fan, it wouldn't be racist to say, oh, you know what? I'll take one of the Croatians. It's just lazy and dumb. And I'll take a little bit of blame on this because I was on vacation partly, and I wasn't paying attention. And a lot of times I'll punch back because I'm one of the few people who has an audience that's willing to point out absurdities like these. I just wasn't paying attention to this story last week, and I didn't even listen to the audio. And the only reason I started paying attention to it over the weekend was because this woman who was Korean named Lee won. So now he's been suspended for correctly predicting that a Korean woman named Lee would win the U.S. Women's Open. It's wild. Who's up next?
All right, we got the Milkman in San Francisco.
The Milkman in San Francisco. What's up, Milkman?
Yeah, how are you doing? Okay, it's not racist, it's sexist. Hank Haney is not, this wasn't general sports knowledge. This was golf. It's allegedly his area of expertise. Now, also, Hank Haney is a shill for golf gimmicks, for swing
All right,
trainers.
so pause. Hold on.
If he-
Stop for a second. Hank Haney is not paid based on his knowledge of women's golf, right? That's like saying, oh, it's sexist of Stephen A. Smith to not know as much about the WNBA as he does the NBA. Stephen A. Smith is paid to talk about the NBA, which millions of people watch, not to talk about the WNBA, which a handful of people watch. So every person out there right now who is in any way paid to talk about a sport, you're probably being paid most of the time to talk about men's sports. Now, we'll talk about the Women's World Cup on here, on this show. We'll occasionally talk about a women's maybe college basketball. Certainly during the Olympics, we'll talk about women's sports that are going on, gymnastics in particular, which has a huge audience. We'll talk about women's tennis with Serena Williams. But by and large, we talk about men's sports the most because most people out there listening watch men's sports more than women's sports. So saying that you don't know that much about a women's sports when it is a pinprick as popular as a men's sport is not sexist. Like, I don't have any issue with, like, if I come on right now and I started talking about the WNBA instead of the NBA title game that happened last night, most of you would change the channel. That's not because you'd be like, oh, I don't trust Clay's WNBA knowledge. It's because you would care a lot more about the NBA. So I don't see how him not knowing much about women's golf is sexist. Do you know much about? I know a decent amount about men's golf. I don't know much about women's golf. I know a lot about the NBA. I don't know much about the WNBA. That doesn't make me sexist. It means that I would prefer to watch the people who are better at their sport play. Men are better at sports than women are. If you're upset by that, then blame biology. Men are bigger, stronger, and faster than women. As a result, they tend to play at a higher caliber in every sport. Doesn't mean you can't like women's sports, but every top women's athlete would get dominated by top men's athletes. It's that great stat that came out recently. Every Texas State high school boys sprinter would have set a women's all-time record last year. That's because male sprinters are better than female sprinters. Where's that guy? The milkman. You're upset? Is he still there?
I'm here.
Yeah, so what do you, like, he does a show about...
Here's my point, is that he does a show about golf. Now,
men's golf.
Probably most people, well, it's golf specifically, right? So the thing is, you're arguing apples and oranges, because I'm not trying to go out at 50 or 60 years old and play competitive basketball or competitive sprinting. But many 50 and 60-year-olds want to play golf. They want to get better. But he's there selling products to tell people to get better. If he just said, you know what, you men should watch the women's game. Their game, you can relate to it, tempo, contact, and you can get a better game. But that doesn't sell any merchandise for him. Also, the game needs to be grown. It doesn't. It doesn't get grown.
He should pretend that people who are going to win the games are not going to win the games.
Pretend? What do you mean pretend?
I mean, he said I would take a Lee. I would take a Korean.
You know what? First of all, like, what is that saying? If you don't know anything, you should keep your mouth shut. Isn't there a saying like that? He should have known the women. He already said he didn't know anything. He didn't even know the tournament was on. So he should just let it go at that. He tried to make a joke about it, but the joke was at the expense of the women's game, at the expense of women.
How is it at the expense of women? How is it at the expense of women? He predicted that a Korean woman would win because they dominate, and they did. Is it at the expense of women if I say who's gonna win the Wimbledon? I don't know, maybe one of the Williams sisters. Is that offensive to women?
It's not the same, Clay. You know that.
Why is it not the same?
You're an attorney. You understand the argument.
Why is it not the same? I'm just picking somebody based on their last name who has dominated a sport.
So he's not a golf expert. He's a men's golf expert, right?
So now you're saying he shouldn't have ever mentioned the fact that the U.S. Women's Open is going on at all. That's your argument.
No, it was brought up to him, and then he said, "Why didn't you know that it was going to be on?" Oh, I'm going to guess Korean win, maybe a Lee. Like
all right.
That.
So stop there. Stop there. If somebody on my show says, "Hey, the comes to me and says, "Hey, the spelling bee's going on," I say, "Really? Oh, I didn't know that." And he's like, "Yeah, who are you going to take to win?" Well, I guess I'll take one of the Indian guys or girls. Should I get suspended?
So that you knew you're being sort of sarcastic or tongue-in-cheek? Or is it like, you know what? I mean, the women's game is so unimportant and so meaningless that just a Korean, a Lee. Let's move on to the next topic. I mean, that's where I'm coming from.
You're trying so desperately to be offended here. I can't imagine what it's like to live in your world, Milkman. You're just driving around all the time, offended, perpetually outraged. This is ridiculous. Again, easy answer. One of the guys comes on my show and says, "Hey, the Boston Marathon's going on tonight." I said, "Oh, really? Or today?" I didn't know that. Who you got? I don't know. Give me one of the Kenyans. Boom. On to the next topic. Suspend me? Somebody comes on and says, "Hey, spelling bee's going on today, this weekend. Spelling bee just happened. We had an eight-way tie. We talked about this. Who you got in the spelling bee?" I don't know. Give me one of the Indians. They dominate. We got the Miss Universe. Doesn't Argentina win Miss Universe or Venezuela, one of those countries? Who you got to win Miss Universe? Give me the Venezuelans. They always win. I'm not sure which one it is. Argentina or Venezuela has won like an insane number of Miss Universes. Outkick VIP, who's up?
Mike in Modesto.
Clay, you should have gave the milkman a free DVAP shirt, man.
I don't even understand the milkman's argument there. Like, why? It's offensive to women that he picked a woman to win the. I mean, it would be offensive to women if he had been like, "I'm going to pick a man to win the U.S. Women's Open." Although I don't know now. Did you see that they had that controversy that nobody wants to talk about? Did you see they had D2 Did you see that? This is unbelievable. I can't believe, like, this is what women should be upset about if they want to be upset about something. They have dudes who are now running as women. This guy was a D2 scholarship athlete. He came in 300th, like 400th for men. He decided that he was now going to identify as a woman, and he won the D2 National Sprint Championship over the last weekend. Like, men pretending to be women, that should be offensive in the world of sports. Like, I can't imagine being a woman competing against a dude with male testosterone who is just saying, hey, I'm identifying now as a woman, and this guy just comes out and dominates you because he's biologically born male. Like, if you want to be offended by something, that's something you can be offended by. Like, that's not fair. But a guy predicting correctly that a country filled with people who are dominating a sport would go on and win the sport? And again, I can't get past the fact we got 6 women with the exact same name. Tell me how big of a story that would be if we had 6 Tom Bradys in the NFL who were all dominant players. And then the Super Bowl, the NFL season was about to start, and you were like, who's going to win the Super Bowl this year? And I was like, I don't know. Give me the Bradys. That wouldn't be racist. Again, just take it outside of football. Put it into Olympic swimming. Imagine there were 6 gold medal champion level men's swimmers named Phelps. Michael Phelps. You're like, who's going to win the most gold medals this year? Give me those American Phelpses. It's not remotely racist. Anybody else who's still waiting to call? Did we get a single call of people who think he should actually be suspended, Dub?
No, but we do have one more caller. We got Dave in St. Louis.
Dave in St. Louis, what's up? Well, we couldn't be flawless on the calls today. But I do think that's instructive. A lot of times, these stories of people being quote-unquote outraged are a tiny minority of people that aren't actually representative of the real world. This radio show is representative of the real world. We have on this show lots of callers, lots of Twitter interactions, but we're on in all 50 states. A lot of people streaming all over the world. I opened up phone lines. We didn't get a single person who called in and said that guy said that Hank Haney should be suspended. Not one. We got the one guy, the milkman out in San Francisco, who wanted to argue that he shouldn't have ever talked about the U.S. women, like he was being disrespectful of women's sports. Whatever that means. Women's sports are not as good as men's sports if you have to compare the two. It's not disrespectful to women's sports. Male athletes are bigger, stronger, and faster. They are better at all of their sports that they play the same. Now, I've talked about this on the show a lot. I actually enjoy watching the women's softball on this time of year, every year. I think it's awesome. I enjoy watching women's gymnastics more than I do men's gymnastics during the Olympics. There are relatively few sports like that. If I have to choose between watching the Men's World Cup or the Women's World Cup, I would rather watch the Men's World Cup. If I have to choose between watching the NBA or the WNBA, I would rather watch the NBA. I would rather watch men play sports, typically, than I would women. Now, sometimes I'd rather watch Serena Williams play because I'd rather watch her play than a couple of Euro dudes that I don't know in a tennis tournament. But by and large, men are better athletes than women. It's not disrespectful to say that PGA players are better than LPGA players, and that I would rather watch Tiger and Phil than I would whoever's playing on the women's golf tour. Men are, and by the way, almost everybody agrees with me. There's a reason the television ratings reflect what they do. 20 million people are going to watch the men's NBA in the finals. Maybe 400,000 are going to watch the WNBA. 40 times as many, 50 times as many people are going to watch men play basketball at the highest level as watch women play basketball at the highest level. That's because most of you agree with me. You'd rather watch men play basketball than women. It's not sexist. The men are better. This is crazy how we've defined these absurd growth of like, oh, if you say anything a little, it's not even, I don't even think what he said was risky. It's crazy how we've so advanced and expanded the scope of what is considered racist or sexist. Liking the NBA over the WNBA is not sexist. Most women like the NBA more than they do the WNBA. The product is better because the men are better at what they do. It's crazy. It's crazy that we're in this world where things that aren't in any way racist or sexist end up being classified as such. Let me say this too. Racism to me, and this is an easy way to define it, is when you say somebody can't do something because of their race. That is looking at someone and judging whether or not they can't do it. Saying they can't do it because of their race. So if Hank Haney had come on and said, an Asian woman will never be good enough to win the LPGA, the U.S. Women's Championship, that would be racist. But saying a woman would never win the men's U.S. Open, in my opinion, is not sexist. The men's golf players are better. Saying that you expect a Korean woman to win a championship is not racist. And it's certainly not sexist. It's crazy. The world is upside down. And what's crazy about this is people are so afraid to even defend people like Hank Haney in stories like these. I bet I'm the only person you've ever heard in this entire week's worth of story pointing out that he didn't say anything that bad or even playing the audio for you. Because everybody else is so afraid of the mob coming after them. I don't care about the damn mob. Come after me if you want to. I got enough money. You can be offended by me. Ultimately, all you're going to do is grow my audience.